Welcome to the Customer Wins podcast, where business leaders discuss their secrets and techniques for helping their customers succeed and in turn grow their business.
Hi, I'm Rich Walker, the host of the Customer Wins, where I talk to business leaders about how they help their customers win and how their focus on customer experience leads to growth. Past guests have included Mark Furman, CEO of eTream, and Mike Rao, Chief Revenue Officer for Future Capital. Today, I'm speaking with George Salmas, Managing Principal at The Food Lawyers. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Quick, the leader in enterprise forms processing. When the last step to earning your client's business requires processing forms, don't ruin a good relationship with a bad experience. Instead, get Quick Forms to make processing forms a great experience and the easiest part of your transaction. Visit quickforms.com to get started. Now, before I introduce today's guest, I have to give a big thank you to Mark Thomas of the Entrepreneur Source for introducing me to George. Mark helps people transition their career into entrepreneurship, and we all need more entrepreneurs, so go Mark. And he's also a Vistage chair. Okay, I'm really excited to introduce George Salmas, Managing Principal of the Food Lawyers. George earned his law degree from UCLA Law School and was a Navy Lieutenant JAG officer handling courts-martial in Greece, Spain, Morocco, and even ships at sea. George leads the Food Lawyers representing food importers, manufacturers, and brand owners. His firm defends class actions in federal court and currently defends over 70 California Prop 65 cases. I also have to add, because I've known George for quite some time, that he has earned his spot as one of only a handful of true experts in legal matters related to food products. George, welcome to the Customer Wins.
Rich, it's great to be here and always great to talk to you.
Now, if you haven't heard this podcast before, I talk with business leaders about what they're doing to help their customers win, how they built and deliver a great customer experience, and the challenges to growing their own company. George, I want to understand your business a little better. How does your company help people?
You know, Rich, in the food industry, there's lots of pressures on the people that manage or own the company. There's FDA, USDA regulatory pressures, there's class actions, there's various kinds of competitors, things going on. And whenever someone comes to us, they're already having a problem. I mean, they're already coming to us with some difficulty. And our focus is to take that off their back, to relieve their stress, and to handle these situations that we've handled so many times. So one client told me, she goes, George, you're not in the law business at all. You're in the stress relief business, and you're really good at it. So that's how we see ourselves helping people.
Yeah, I love how you said that because, I'm in financial services for the most part. And I think people think of lawyers as just lawyers, right? You're reading case law and you're applying it to things, but you're so right. You're helping people through the drama and the challenge of what they're in. Yeah. Why food? How did you get started in food?
There was a time when about half our clients were food companies. And a good friend of mine, a professor at USC in entrepreneurship named Patrick Henry, who tells me he's related to the other Patrick Henry, suggested we call ourselves the Food Lawyers. And that forced us to become really, really specialized and really develop a lot of skills in that discipline. So that's how it happened. It's been great for us.
And that's also another really big lesson that entrepreneurs need to hear, because having a niche is really, really hard to swallow. It's hard to come to that conclusion and say, yes, we're going to focus on it. How hard was that decision for you guys?
It took 3 or 4 years because just what you said, the person always feels like, what am I missing out on by being in this niche? And the answer is, if you're powerful in the niche, the rest of the stuff doesn't matter. And that's very hard to internalize. You can understand it intellectually, but to really take it in and use it, it took us 3 or 4 years.
How long have you been a lawyer? How long have you been both a lawyer and the food lawyer?
December 18th, 2024, I've been a lawyer for 50 years.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. That was the day I was sworn in federal court. That's how I know that date. I've been a food lawyer for over 20 years.
So you pretty much know everything. You have all the hidden secrets of what's going on in the food industry, right?
I'm going to I'm going to say yes, even though I wonder myself.
Yeah, and I don't know that we should mention client names because I know you've represented some really big brands that a lot of people consume and enjoy, or even fought some of the ones that are out there too, I'm sure. But I'm curious, when we come back to how you help your customers win, it's stress relief, as you said, but ultimately, what is it you're doing? I mean, are you the guy in court yelling and screaming at the other lawyer and the judge and all that stuff? Is it dramatic? What is it you do?
Well, a lot of times, we do try we have a federal trial like once every couple of years, which is actually a lot. There's a lot of litigators in town, litigators that have never tried a case in their lives, but they handle litigation and they settle it all. They never go to court. But a lot of the stuff we do is just advisory. We had a case where a company on the East Coast, family owned, doing a couple $1 billion a year in sales, got challenged by a competitor that was like 20 times bigger. And they thought they were in a real bind. And they brought me in to handle the problem, and I did. And it's sometimes, like at one point they were considering having a recall over something on a label. And I told the board, we're not having a recall. That's not going to take place. Forget about it. We will lose more market share doing that than if we just litigate with these clowns. And I'm not going to let that happen either. And we outmaneuvered them and the bad guys went away. So that's an example of what I do. Never gets in the papers. If it did, I didn't succeed.
I hear the bulldog in your voice coming out. These clowns.
Yeah, the clients need somebody they can count on in the crunch. And so, yeah, that's important.
So that's something I was thinking about, being accountable. So if somebody comes to you and they have a problem, how do they know they can trust you? How do you engender the ability for them to say, I will relieve that stress by trusting you with this problem?
That's a great question. What I do is I just talk to them. I let them ask me questions about their case. I tell them early on, hey, whether you hire us or not, this is attorney-client privilege. So you can say as much as you want or as little as you want, but it's going to stay with me. And then I go, so yeah, and they start talking and I start fielding their questions and telling them how I see things. And at the end of that, they almost always say, okay, when do we start? It's just being myself.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned early on in the intro that you've earned the spot as a food expert. Do you think that, I mean, early on, 20 years ago, before you called yourself the food lawyers, that you had that expertise? What was the differentiating factor that you attracted all these food companies that they would give you that trust?
It's interesting. In the old days, you didn't have as many face-to-face meetings on the fly. Like nowadays, you can have a video meeting like that. Right. It can take place. In the old days, you had a lot more time to prepare before you went and met with somebody. And so that's how you go in well prepared. But now, after more than 20 years of doing this, I can have a video meeting and I pretty much know the questions they're going to ask before they ask them. So just that experience allows me to show them, they can count on me.
Yeah, that's something I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs about. And one of my favorite sayings is your first idea is not your best idea. It's the one that gets you going. But it gets you going into a focus and into a discipline where you spend enough time, you start to see the patterns, start to recognize how things work. And then you have that expertise that you build upon. What would you counsel to somebody brand new to becoming a lawyer or a financial advisor or any career, to how to stick into it and stay with it long enough to become the expert you've become?
You've got to make a big investment in yourself. Problems are going to come along that are going to cost you more to learn how to handle than you're going to make on that specific case. Especially at the beginning, take the time to learn how to do it correctly, because it's going to come back. And then you're going to get the payoff and you'll be experienced. If you're not willing to make that investment in yourself and in your skills, get out of the business, because you just want to do the same thing over and over. We don't get the same problem ever exactly. Every case that we get is different and we have to give it different thought. And that's why I enjoy the work. Make an investment in yourself.
And that is so good to hear, George. I've started my first business when I was 12. So that was quite some time ago. I've started over 10 different ventures and companies. And even in my current company, we're in year 22 of our business. I find myself exploring and playing with things. Like I play with AI tools all the time. And I ask myself, is this a good use of my time? I mean, am I just wasting time being interested in something? But what you just said makes so much sense, that I'm investing in myself to learn these skills and see different things out there. That is so important to do. Great advice. Tell me a success story, somebody that came to you with a problem and you helped them figure it out. And I don't know, have you did you ever take something to Supreme Court?
Never been to the Supreme Court, but an interesting story, a case we handled a few years ago. I had a client that had one major competitor. These were the two biggest guys in the country in this ethnic food, and they were both doing super well. And my guy wanted to know how big his competitor was, how much business he was doing. And yeah, there was just no information available. The grocery store scanning didn't cover these goods. It just wasn't there. So I asked him a bunch of questions, and I extracted from him that there was an ingredient that came in a tanker truck that went to his competitor. And if he knew how many of those tanker trucks went in, and then there was a byproduct that came out in a different tanker truck, if he knew how much of those were going in and out in a week, he'd have all the information he needs to know how much product the guy makes. So with that, we reconnoitered. We had a big budget, by the way. We had cost as no object for this guy. We reconnoitered the factory of the adversary and discovered that they had one gate for all trucks coming in and out, and it was across the street from a cheesy motel. So we hired a private detective firm, because they have the logistics, and they had two people in there 24 hours a day for a week, which was really expensive. And they had a camera aimed from a bathroom window at that gate, and they recorded that gate 24/7 for 7 days. And then we distilled it down and counted the statistics. And the client he knew exactly how much business they were doing based on that intelligence. And he changed the location of his own gate, so someone couldn't do it to him.
My goodness. I mean, that's like movie stuff. I didn't think about that. I thought law work was all about litigation and sending letters back and forth.
Now, the most fun part is stuff like that. When you're presented with a strange problem, and there's a lot riding on it, and you come up with a creative solution. That's the best part of my job. We enjoy going to court because it's challenging, but the stuff like that is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about this Prop 65 casework. What does that represent, and how is that different from other stuff you do?
Prop 65, if you've ever seen, like at Starbucks, that sign that says warning, products on these premises contain chemicals known to the state of California to cause cancer and or birth defects. And okay, that's a Prop 65 warning. And what they're saying is there's chemicals in the products there that potentially could cause problems. In California, products sold in California individually have to have that warning on it. And the vast majority of companies don't know that. So by the time they find out, they've already been served with a lawsuit, and then we end up defending them. Sometimes it's a lawsuit, sometimes it's just a notice, but we end up defending them.
Oh, wow. So does that just mean fixing it? Is it a fix-it ticket?
It depends. We had a case right now. I'm going to hide the ball a little bit, but I'll tell you that it involved, I'm going to say olives in brine. Okay, that's not what it is, but I'm going to say that to hide the ball. And so the client gets the notice. And so we're having a video meeting with the client, and one of our attorneys, I'm not going to say her name, she would be embarrassed, but she's a PhD in molecular biology from Johns Hopkins. And then she went to Berkeley Law School, and then she did environmental trials for the EPA. And now she's working with us. So we're sitting there, and and she looks up and she says, I wonder if they tested just the olives or also the brine, because I wonder if that would be different. So Yeah. So none of it, she thought of that right away. We tested it, and sure enough, the heavy metals were in the brine, not in the olives. And so we won the case just based on that insight. Uh,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
it's nice to surround yourself with geniuses.
Yeah, right. No, you always should. So, okay, that's one way to measure success, but how do you overall tell if your customers are happy with you and you're being successful for them?
You know, you're gonna laugh. They always pay their bills. And when they get in a bind, we're the first person they think of. So those are the two measures that we go by. Do they like us? I don't know. I mean, they probably identify us with problems because that's when the context they see us in. But when they're in a bind, we're the first person they call. I think that's how I measure success.
Okay. Do you have an idea of what your retention rate is? How many clients you retain, or is that hard to measure because they don't always have a problem?
Exactly. We'll have we might not hear from somebody for 4 or 5 years. And then I get a phone call and it's like they talked to me yesterday. George, listen, So I just don't know. I mean, I can tell you this. I've never seen one of our clients represented by somebody else. So that's all I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a totally different question. In financial advisement, a lot of the times the financial advisor and the planner is playing the role of psychologist. They're helping people go through the emotions of market changes or life events and things like that. How much of your job is psychology with your client?
I mean, I think probably a fair amount, but we try to keep away from that. I try to keep it more focused on the facts. I had a phone call earlier today, and we made a really, really good deal for a client, a transaction. But at the end, the bad guy, the adversary, was nickel and diming him, and the client got really upset. And he goes, "I'm going to tell these guys to." And I said, "Wait." I said, we robbed the bank on this deal. Now we're just paying for parking on the getaway car. Let's just get in the car and drive off." And he goes, "Yeah, George, you're right." I said, "Good. Let's just not be smug. Let's just let this guy have his little nickels and dimes." And we laugh. And he goes, "Okay." So that if that's psychology, I guess it is. But I'm keeping him focused on the deal.
No, it is in a way because you are giving them stability in the water that they're treading. I mean, the very few times I've had legal tussles, like I get a cease and desist letter or something like that, your heart's racing. You're like, what does this mean? How does this impact me? What do I have to do to change it? I mean, my wife's starting a new business and she's worried about getting something like that. And I'm like, don't worry about it. But you are playing that role, right? You are helping people calm down and go through the situation better, right? Relieving
You
their
know,
stress.
in a situation like that, people want strength. They want somebody that's seen this before and is not rattled by it. And I've seen it a lot of times and I'm not rattled. So yeah, in that sense, but we're relieving stress. We're taking the stress out of their problem and let them focus on the issues.
Okay, so this leads me down to another question I have, which I love to talk about artificial intelligence. Are you at risk of losing your job to AI?
I don't believe so. It's funny. I attended some seminars on AI and learned about where its deficiencies are. But there was a actually well-known law firm in Washington D.C. that filed just about a month ago a brief in federal court where a lot of the research was done by AI and the cases were completely fictitious. The AI just made up a precedent that didn't exist. And the judge blew a fuse, and it was in all the legal publications. When certain things happen, I subscribe to services that send me emails, and I got one on this. Just and the attorneys were really embarrassed by it, but to tell you the truth, they probably got a lot of publicity. But AI has its place, but you got to be careful.
Wow, what a fantastic failure.
And they asked
crazy.
AI, they asked the AI engine a question: Are these cases correct? Are these holdings correct? And he came back with yes.
Oh, wow. Wow. I mean, oftentimes when we talk about AI, we talk about what's coming, but we're not talking about how it's potentially harming situations. I mean, imagine the lawyers on that case were reprimanded or even, I mean, they could have been fined or who knows what. That's really, really serious. Okay, let's take it from a different perspective. How do you see AI changing or impacting the experience you deliver to your customers?
I think ultimately, we do a lot of computerized research where we sign into a search engine and we say, give me the cases that talk about so and so. And you get the case and you look at it. So I think AI is going to improve that process of identifying precedents that are useful. But to have an AI write a brief, it's a little scary.
Yeah, I know that definitely is. Yeah, I'm looking towards the future where it helps you get information, gather information, process information. In fact, I just interviewed somebody whose company reads trusts and wills and tax returns to try to understand the information about them so they can advise their clients on what was said and what was actually put into practice. Do you think your clients are using AI to not need you as much?
No, because they can't even, and maybe I'm wrong, but I doubt it, because they don't even understand the issues. Like this thing about the brine, I'm not sure the rest of us would have thought of it, but that lady, she's a scientist. And that was the first thing that came to her mind. And she just kind of asked us that question. We all looked at her and said, let's check it out. And she won the case for us. I don't know that AI could do that.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I've had this conversation many times that I don't think AI is going to replace anybody's job. I think people who leverage AI and gain better skills and therefore efficiency can replace people who haven't learned those skills.
That I
Right?
agree with. Yep, that I totally agree with. Yeah.
So do you think that you'll have, I don't know, more efficiency with paralegals in your staff? Or because I agree, the creativity needs of a human brain to see things from different perspectives, especially the one that you've honed for your entire career, cannot be replaced. But do you see a lot more automation coming?
Rich, I don't know. I mean, that's a great question. We don't use paralegals now because of the sophistication of the problems that we handle. Right now, that lady attorney, I assigned her a project that she's never done before, but I gave her an outline. She's killing it. She's just doing a brilliant job. I got an intermediate draft, and I said, "This is just fabulous." I don't think AI could do something like that. I think when you have a person that is dedicated and has that kind of education, I think that's a one-stop opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. So George, I'm curious, you've been in business for so long. I mean, especially as a lawyer, you're a leader, you're in your community. I'm sure tons and tons of food companies know you. What kind of tips or secrets could you share with other business leaders to help them win more clients or help their clients win more with what they're doing? Anything come to mind?
Well, you've always got to be ethical. I mean, there's always opportunities to cheat, and you always want to be above board. That's critical. If you don't respect yourself, your clients aren't going to respect you. And you got to really give 100%. At least I do. I try to. You really dedicate yourself to the client's cause, and that is credibility. If they really know that you care about what's going on and you have skin in the game, that they appreciate it, and that'll earn your respect.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like if you don't have a passion for the customer, how are you really going to do well with your business? I mean, your product can only do so much for you. The rest is your service, your ethic, like you said, and who you are to them. That's amazing.
I totally agree. I could not agree more. Ultimately, it's people to people.
Yes, absolutely. So look, as we wrap this up, I have another question for you, but before I ask it, what are the best ways for people to connect with you?
The easiest thing in the world is to remember thefoodlawyers.com. If you go to that, if you put in on the URL line, thefoodlawyers.com, you get to our website. Our team's emails are there. There's some background. You'll find me. Easiest thing in the world.
Yeah, and I want people to go there and just see the different items you put into the cityscape, the picture of a city that's not just a city. I love that photo.
Yeah, some very creative people did that for us. It's very people enjoy it for sure.
Yeah. All right. So here's my last question. Who has had the biggest impact on your leadership style or how you approach what you do?
For me right now, for who I am right now, there's a gentleman named Glenn Gow, Gow, and he is a coach of Well, there's two people. Glenn is one. He's a coach of CEOs. And I attended a couple of his lectures, and he changed the way I approach problems. So when you've been doing something for one way 48 years, and you change the way you do it, that's pretty large. It's been very helpful. The other one is a guy on the internet on YouTube named Tim Hahn, Hahn, and he just has lots of good actionable advice on how to improve yourself. And I listen to one of his videos every morning, and it gets me pointed in the right direction.
Yeah, I love that. And several of my guests have mentioned something similar, that you need to be a student. You need to be improving yourself along the way. And I know personally, I mean, to be in my own company for over 20 years, if I wasn't improving myself and finding joy in doing that, I wouldn't be in my current role still.
Rich, I've been doing this for as long as I have. I've learned you never arrive. You don't end up someplace and now I know how to do it. You're constantly adjusting, constantly learning. And I couldn't agree with you more. If you think you're going to get somewhere and then stop learning, you better forget it. It's not going to happen.
That's right. It's not, well, what's the other way? Not the destination, the journey, but you're right. It's, you don't ever arrive. You hit a new milestone, you just set a new one and go on, and go on, and go on.
Totally.
George, this has been so great to talk to you. I so appreciate it. So I want to say thank you to George Salmas, managing principal of the Food Lawyers, for being on this episode of The Customer Wins. Go check out his website at thefoodlawyers.com. Make sure you sign up for his really entertaining newsletter. And of course, don't forget to check out my company, Quick, at quickforms.com, where we make processing forms easy. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion, and we'll click the like button, share this with someone, and subscribe to our channels for future episodes of The Customer Wins. George, thank you so much for joining me today.
Rich, totally enjoyed it. My pleasure. Have a great day, guy. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Customer Wins podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.